Hey everybody, I'm sitting here with my new friends Kenyon Williams, Dr. Kenyon Williams, and Larnell Lewis, and we just got finished with the Moorhead State Day of Percussion, so a few more minutes then we're off to our flight, but they agreed to have a few minutes and chat with us. So Dr. Williams, how's it going?
Ooh, it feels so formal. Going well. Now that it's all over, it went off very well. So
well, we are in the conference room. It's pretty formal. It's pretty serious. If only they could see our mic rig. Yeah, they might give it away. But
the coffee cup propping makes it look spectacular. It's amazing.
It's high tech, yeah, for sure. Hey, so we finished the day. Congrats on a successful day.
Thank you.
And thanks so much for having us. And what exactly is a Day of Percussion? For our listeners who maybe don't know what that entails, what should they expect to see at a Day of Percussion?
Well, Day of Percussion is usually when a host puts together a lineup of great artists. Usually most hosts will bring in folks from a wide variety of percussion disciplines, marimba, marching, world, drum set, whatever it may be. And then puts together an entire day of events, usually maybe features some concerts from local students as well, maybe their own students performing. And I've been very lucky to attend quite a few myself and get the idea from other folks that I've learned from. And then have the opportunity at my own university, Minnesota State Moorhead, to be able to do my own over the last couple of years. I've done about 6 now, and I've learned something every time I've done it.
Yeah, great. And how did you procure Mr. Lewis over here, who is the drummer of the very well-known Snarky Puppy?
Yeah.
Congrats on all of this.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just a screaming success of a group, and I think all my students are fans.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's a monster player over here, monster group.
Yeah.
Honestly, total blind luck. I was looking for a drummer that was outside of the traditional, maybe the traditional straight ahead jazz route, which a lot of guest artists tend to, for these events in my past, have been. And I have some students who are very into Snarky Puppy that Larnell met, and they're probably his #1 fans right now. But they were talking about this band, and of course turned me on to the band a few years ago, and I was just right in the middle of procuring funds for this event and dreaming about artists when I thought, how cool would it be to bring Larnell or one of these guys from Snarky to the band, to our Day of Percussion. So I got online, started Googling, and found Larnell's info, but I couldn't find his phone number anywhere. I had a hard time trying to track this guy down, or his direct email. Finally, I even called, he's a Yamaha artist, so I called Yamaha, and they sent me some more information, contact this person. And eventually via email, and maybe Facebook first, right? I think I Facebook messaged Larnell and just said, hey, I'm thinking about this event. Are you interested? And got back to me pretty quick, and the ball got rolling from there.
Great clinic. Loved it. I loved your clinic. How long have you been doing these types of things, and how long have you been clinicking?
As a clinician, I guess it's been about 7 or 8 years for me now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I loved what you did. Play a backing track, play all beats that fit, modifying what you do on the snare, modifying what you do on the bass drum, and you just took a nice polling of the audience. Like, how do you feel this fits different? Mm-hmm. Whereas if I do it this way, how does that change the mood of the same backing track? And I like that you didn't tell them what the right answer was, although I really wanted to know. I was like, so wait, which one?
Which would you choose? That's what I was wondering too.
Which was the best? I really wanted to know. But it was really, really cool because it was like simple stuff we could all understand. And I'm just wondering, 7 years clinicking, I know my clinics have really evolved and changed. And was there a path leading up to doing a clinic this way?
Yeah, the progression towards doing compare and contrast with grooves inside of a track came from session work, came from dealing with other students and trying to basically bring more of an awareness to what you do and how it affects the music. And so when I started, my first clinic I did ever was the Cape Breton International Drum Festival, which was held up in Canada. And unfortunately it's no longer, but what was great was it was the year of the legends. So there was Don Familaro, Liberty DeVito was there, Uriel Jones, drummer from the Funk Brothers out of Motown, and a whole bunch of others. And you do these clinics and you see how people receive information. And I was trying to figure out what could I say that was near and dear to my heart and was unique to me and what I experienced in my usual working scenarios. So As clinics go on, people ask about foot technique or stick control and a whole bunch of other stuff. But I really wanted to, not only speak about technical things, but talk about the music and talk about what the music does and how you can change and manipulate the music regardless of where you are technically.
I was my favorite part was when a student asked you about your gear, and I think particularly snare drum. So what snare drum are you using? And you kind of picked it up and looked at it, and you went like, I don't know. It's a metal drum. I like metal drum. But I've always been kind of ashamed that I'm not much of a gearhead. Like people ask like real specific, like, so your bearing edge, how do you like? I'm like, man, I don't know. I just need like a thing that sounds good. And so I don't know, it felt really good to hear you say that.
Well, I think especially since students, so many students they come into college and or wherever they are, and they think that the magic ingredient is that new pair of sticks or that new technical gizmo that'll let me play everything I see Larnell doing, and they don't realize the hundreds and hundreds of hours and thousands of hours that go into perfecting that one technique. It's not the head. The head's to make it sound better. The sticks can make it a teeny bit easier if you have the right stick. But man, that's just a small percentage of the final product.
Yeah, the sound's in the head and comes out of the hands,
Yeah, it gets uninteresting very quickly. You dive into gear for only so long, and then, what more can you say?
Well, I thought last night one of my favorite parts we had a grand finale concert, and we had other guest artist was Shanahan, who's a frame drum artist with Yo-Yo Ma's Silk Road Ensemble.
Yeah,
and
the duet was crazy.
Yeah, I just wanted to put these guys in the front of the stage and say improvise and turn it loose, and y'all did. Y'all just brought it to the front of the auditorium, and the audience loved it. And but what was amazing was when Shane came down, he was playing a bowron on his lap, which is a fairly soft instrument. And our first thought was, when Shane came to me with this idea, I was like, well, how are you going to bounce out to Larnell? And then Larnell walks up to the front with just a snare drum. At first, you played with just your hands, and then you moved on to a brush and
using mallets and a broomstick
and everything. And it was all about the touch and the heart, and it really wasn't about the let's see what kind of crazy sound I can get out of this prototype drum thing that none of the rest of your guys are ever going to get a touch. It wasn't that. It was all about pure musicianship.
He didn't know what the drum was anyway.
He didn't know that.
I don't know. What is this snare drum?
It's a snare drum.
But it was pure heart between two guys who were communicating, and that was it. One of my students caught me after. He said, "Man, I could see those guys just looking at each other and totally following in the moment, and it was beautiful. And they really appreciated it.
Thank you. I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I enjoy making music with people that listen, and Shane listens.
Oh, yeah.
It's awesome.
Well, it's really cool that what you did was it was flashy. It pleased everyone, including Dr. Williams in the audience, the young people in the audience, and the moms and dads in the audience. Yet it wasn't like twirling your sticks and you know what I mean. It wasn't. You didn't have to resort to any stupid candy to please.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really cool when you find performances that can please the doctors in the room. It can also please the moms and dads, and it's just really.
And the middle school kids in the front row.
Yeah,
and those are the guys that are paying to be there all day. So
yeah. Well, hey, Kenyon, tell me a little bit about how many years you've been doing this, and maybe what goes into organizing such a big deal.
Sure. Well, this is my 6th day of percussion. I do one every 2 years. As I said before, I learned it from observing other people who I was able to be a part of studios like Jim Campbell, University of Kentucky, Ben Toth at the Hart School. And when I came here to Minnesota, a gentleman across the way from me, named David Eiler, Dr. David Eiler teaches at Concordia College. And he has a huge day of percussion every year. I'm not sure what year this is going to be this year, but he does like maybe 23, 24. I think this year he's bringing Peter Erskine and Bob Becker, and
nice.
He brings in some fantastic talent every year. And so I watched him and talked to him about hosting my own, but making it on opposite semester, so we could have because our students are close in geographical proximity, so they could kind of see a little bit of both. So I learned from him and talked to him about some ideas, and then I kind of developed some of my own ideas. And one of the key things about a day of percussion is so much is based upon your school and where you're at. Casey, you were saying, for example, at your location, it might be difficult because of access to venues or scheduling dates. My campus, there's only certain weekends I could possibly do this. And so you have to book these things a year in advance oftentimes. The funding is another big part of the puzzle. That's probably the biggest part of the puzzle for most people. How do I support an event like this? And for that, there's a lot of possible answers I've discovered over the years. One of the first things I turn to is our state arts board. We have Minnesota has an incredible state grant support system. But that usually requires me to start the process in February of the year prior, which is when I began contacting you gentlemen to see if y'all might be available, and so I could go with that. And then once I know that you're on board and have an idea for fees and airfare and stuff, then I can go to them and say, this is what I need. And they usually support about 30 to 40% of the final packet comes from grants. And then after that, I turn to money that from the university. There's guest artist funds available from different packets. And our percussion ensemble, my students are amazing in that we do a big children's show every year that we bring literally about 2,500 elementary kids to our school to perform for. Yeah. And we've been able to set this up where the organization that does this, we get paid an honorarium, and we save up that money every 2 years, and that 2 years worth of work goes to pay for the next 2 years' Day of Percussion. Mm. So my students really are the ones who pay the majority of y'all's fee because they through sweat labor,
Absolutely,
know. Yeah. And so they're able to. And then they get a lot out of it, which is one reason why I was so keen to bring someone like Larnell here, because literally I'm looking at people the students are like, man, I'd love to see this guy come to campus. And I've had a lot of students play many of your compositions, Casey. So when I said Casey, they're like, oh yeah,
Yeah, great.
So, that's a big part of it. But it doesn't have to be just that. I want to emphasize funding. You can do a day of percussion with $100. One of the things I've really learned is I, as a teacher, sometimes I think, I got to bring in a Peter Erskine. I got to bring in a huge name. And in reality, most of my students have never looked beyond the bubble of where they grew up. So just the local drum set guy that they've never actually heard can be an awesome clinic. And you take that guy out to lunch and give him as much as you can possibly afford, and you have a great day of percussion with him and maybe another local teacher. It doesn't have to be a huge event because you think, well, I've seen this guy do his thing, or I know he's not touring international. Well, you know what? Your students have something still to learn from that guy. And if you're you can start small and build. It doesn't have to be this massive event that people freak out. I'll never get 10 grand in my pocket to host a day of impression like that. Right. You don't need anything like that to get started.
I'm really glad you said you secure your artists before making a proposition for funding, because I've always wondered, what's the order to do that in? Do you secure the funds and then go to your artists and say, hey, look, I have these funds, so you should come? But I guess the right order is the other way. Get your artists on board and just make sure they have the dates open, and then go to your sources and say, hey, look, this is who Larnell is, this is who Shane is, this is really good stuff, you should support this, it'll be successful. Is that right?
You got to give them the whole packet at once. But the thing is, too, I make a pretty good budget before I do it, because there's some artists I have contacted in the past and said, I'd like you to come, and this is what when I contact everyone, I say, this is pretty much what I can afford. And some artists have just flat out said, no, that's not going to do it. And that's fine. That's perfectly fine. So you have to have an idea in mind, because I can't go to that grant agency that normally awards $2,500, $3,000 grants and say, I want $7,000 for this day of percussion. that's never going to fly, right. And another side note I want to mention, if you're interested in hosting a day of percussion, one of the biggest quandaries many new hosts have had is, what about the whole artist endorsement thing? Can I get Yamaha or Majestic or Remo to pay for these guys to come for free? And the answer to that is no. Right. They won't pay for everything. They may supply. They'll provide door prizes. They'll provide some artist support. Like Majestic yesterday sent us a Majestic snare drum for Casey, which is a beautiful instrument, and that helped to represent Majestic. Gave Casey a great instrument. And many of the companies will provide a small honorarium for the artists, but we're not talking. It won't even be enough typically to cover their airfare, much less any honorarium on top. So what I do, and there's many ways to handle it. I know some people, when they do a day of percussion, they'll come to the guest artist and say, I'd like to offer you this much, assuming your endorsement companies can provide this chunk of the pie. And they kind of work it out that way. I got burned by that a few years ago. One of my first days of percussion, I I told an artist basically I can do this, and I assumed his endorsement company would kick in the extra, $1,000, or his couple of companies, and only one of them kicked up like $100, which meant I had to suddenly find $900 out of the blue, and that was a panic moment for me. So what I do is I come to all my artists now and I say, this is what I can afford, and your endorsements are on top of that. And for many artists, that's going to be the thing. To be honest, the piddling honorarium I can offer is not worth the quality of the great guys I get. So the endorsement extra monies on top can be the thing that makes it feasible for the artist, or at least makes it attractive to the artist. But it definitely, at least this way, I know for sure how much I have promised, and the artist knows for sure that if something falls through, it's not my fault. I've done everything I can do to get this much money. Now the rest is up to your endorsement company, and if worse comes to worse, you're at least going to get this much. And that's the key thing. You're not going to show up and we're not going to say, oh, by the way, Remo totally messed you up, man. And I'm not, or any company like that. I mean, and I've never had a problem with Remo, so I shouldn't say that. But you don't want to have to deliver that kind of news, and it's a terrible thing to suddenly have to come up with an extra grand a week or two before the clinics and things.
Yeah, nice to have that perspective.
Yeah, I would say if you really want to plan one more thing, a couple years ago I wrote an article in PAS. Percussive Notes. And if you're not a PAS member, you need to be.
Yes.
Put in that Percussive Art Society plug here.
It's
an awesome organization. But I wrote an article, and if you're a member, you can go online and do a research and type in Kenyon Williams guest artists, and there's an article about the do's and don'ts of hiring a guest artist. And
cool.
And that could include, and it could include a day of percussion or just bringing in a guest artist for one event. And so I wrote, because I had a lot of people catch me over the years and ask me, how did you do this? Where did you get the funds? And so I just wrote an article, and it's back in 2012, I think, that was published. But it answers a lot of these questions that we're kind of discussing right now, and a little bit more depth on some other questions you may have. So turn you on to that.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
If I can just throw another note in, Dr. Williams, you mentioned about working with local artists as well. And I think that's a great idea because often you have guest artists come in. The students and people in the community are excited, and then that guest artist leaves. Right? If you do connect with local artists, that gives the local artists a chance to also connect with those students outside of the Day of Percussion. Adds to the students that they can have, as well as private lesson students, or gives the students and those attending the event a chance in the community to check out those that are playing.
Absolutely.
It just strengthens the community.
Yeah, it probably makes a more long-term effect.
It
stays right there in that area. I think it's a nice lesson to teach them. Like, okay, this person about, this drummer you really admire, and when they meet that person, it's like, oh, they're just a real person, and they're really down to earth, and that's a real important lesson. But also, I think a real important lesson is, oh, this person I haven't heard about, this person who's not in magazines and world-renowned known, also is like super, super valuable and maybe just as talented.
And I think that's a key point. If you're listening to this podcast and you're wondering, well, I'm never going to host a day of percussion. I'm an artist. I'm not an educator who's planning on... You need to know the other side of the coin, because the person who's doing the hiring is looking for certain skill sets. And sometimes the skill set I'm looking for is I just want a ridiculous performer. But that's rare. What I really look for is I want a great performer who's a great personality, connects well with students, an educator who's a great performer who's also a great educator. And as everybody knows, that can be a hard mix. If you go to PASIC very often, you often see a lot of guys that are amazing on stage, that the minute they start talking, you're ready to leave the room 5 minutes later because they have nothing to say. It's all with their hands, which is great. You can learn a lot from their hands. But I've found that in this YouTube generation, the educational side, the ability to communicate a concept like Larnell did yesterday, and Shane did, getting the kids up on stage playing, and you did, Casey. Casey did a master class where my kids played for him. Some of my kids played for him, and he worked with them directly on the music. That educational component, that's not on YouTube.
Right.
Whereas I can Google any day. All my kids can Google Casey here playing White Knuckle Stroll and see virtuosic licks at 2 a.m. And so I didn't really pay you to come and play White Knuckle Stroll for my kids. I paid for you to come on down here, play something, and then they can ask questions and relate to you. And that educational side is if you're a performer and you haven't worked on that ability to connect with kids in the audience, you're not going to get asked back.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Let's talk a little about your new CD.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You mentioned it real briefly yesterday.
Yes.
But man, tell us about it because. There's some sales in this podcast.
Oh my goodness. this will be my first album that I'm putting out, and it's just a collection of music that I've collected and written over the last 10 plus years, some 12 years ago.
Great.
And I'm looking to get it out in 2017. It's a combination of styles, anything from like straight ahead jazz to Afro-Caribbean, which is my background. My parents are from St. Kitts in the Caribbean.
Okay.
And, you know, there's some funk on there, Snarky Puppy-esque tune, you know, just really just pieces of my history in the last, you know, 10 or so years. And some of the music from the earlier years of writing for me came from, you know, coming home from school, and I would, instead of having a journal and writing down, you know, dear diary, this is, you know, I met so-and-so today. She was awesome. Like, I would just write music. You know, if I had a horrible experience, I would write this rock tune in 5/4. I would write, you know, this hip hop thing, or I'd write.
Is that the tempo? Is that the key signature or the time signature of anger right there in 5/4?
You know what?
I always thought 7/8 was a little more aggressive in my
True.
opinion.
You know,
Take 5 is historically the first heavy metal.
So, you know, it's some of that music for me that are milestones, you know, sonic milestones of my day going through high school and living life and different experiences. And the titles have, you know, deep meaning because it's the first record and I want to say something. But yeah, it's also a chance for me to showcase my writing because a lot of people know me as a drummer.
Do these tunes have words? Do you have
Some of them have words, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I only ask because you know, Bob Dylan just won a prize, for literature. Yeah, so I guess last episode on the podcast we talked about songs versus literature, and anyway, I mean, since the titles are have some serious meaning.
So no pressure, Larnell, with that. You're up against Bob Dylan now.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, some of them have words, and some of them just have, you know, storylines, and maybe one day down the line I'll kind of leave it, I'll put it all out there, but it's also based on the title. I hope people with the music can just kind of make their own interpretation and connect to the music in a really interesting way, because so much can be passed through music, you know, passed on and communicated through music.
Yeah, wonderful. What is the title of the CD? Or
there is no title yet.
Not
yet.
That's an interesting title. No title yet.
No title yet. You know, I was working with a few titles, and I decided to just let it go and let the collection of music just speak to me. And so once I get in the mixing studio and kind of hear all the songs just kind of come at me, that inspiration.
Have you been doing it all in Toronto there? Or
I have, yeah. I've some crazy recording situations where anything from major studio to recording at home to getting even Sean Martin from Snarky Puppy's on there. And I remember bringing my keyboard to his hotel when Snarky was in Toronto. Brought my keyboard, brought my headphones, brought my computer, set it all up. He had a suite for his hotel and had like a kitchen counter, so I just set it up there. Keyboard on the counter, you know, and I'm there with the computer with 2 headsets of headphones, and just he's going bananas, soloing and playing a whole bunch of crazy synth stuff on this track, on that Snarky-esque tune. So, yeah.
Well, I'd love to stick with Snarky a little bit. I'm wondering, they're such a runaway success now, and I feel like whether I head into a faculty member's office, they're listening to Snarky Puppy, or whether a grad student picks me up in a car, there's Snarky Puppy. It's like really, really popular. Do you remember, I guess I'm very curious about Snarky's beginnings and versus where it is now. Like, did you feel that tipping point, or did you feel when it, like, you know, I don't know, there was a moment where you're like, whoa, this is out of control?
You know, the history of the band, the Snarky Puppy has been around for about 13 or so years. And from playing in, you know, I think the first gig was playing in the basement of a pizza shop.
Yeah.
Out in Denton, Texas.
See, now my band did that too, but
all we got was pizza.
You know, I mean, they might have just received pizza as well. You know, the core of the band coming out of University of North Texas, and really making the most of the connections that they had out there, including with Robert Spud Seawright, one of the first drummers in the band, who actually no, he was, I guess, the second drummer in the band. He was originally a keyboard player in Snarky Puppy, which was pretty awesome. Yeah.
Wow.
Very, very talented musician, Spud. But, Snarky starting in university, one of those bands just kind of coming together, charts, making things happen, more of a fusion type history, and then connecting with the funk and R&B and gospel scene in Texas, started to morph the sound. So fast forward, I joined the band actually about 4 years ago. And when they hit my sphere of awareness, they had a sound, and they were pretty well established. I think the album that they had going was Tell Your Friends, which was the first DVD record that they did. And I think that's what actually helped to tip things over, Somebody had told Mike League they told Michael League and told him, your records, they're cool, but they're not as fun as the live shows. In fact, your in-studio records are boring. So what you need to do
we need to see this.
Or just record it live in front of an audience. Get that energy, because you guys, the way you play in front of an audience is electric. And they decided, we're going to film it as well.
To me, that's the thing that really grabbed my attention. I think most of this generation, we have a generation that is really expecting to find really high quality live performances on YouTube at a moment's notice. And when someone told me about it, of course, the first thing I popped on YouTube to see if I could find it, or iTunes and stuff. But on YouTube, right away, there's this incredibly high quality video, obviously very professionally done. And the audio's live. It's not like some just, layered in track on top of a wannabe recording session.
No.
And it was just amazing. It's the first band I've seen that did it with this high quality of commitment to the final product that was going to go, obviously, designed to go viral. It was designed to go viral, not just designed to be put on a little shelf somewhere to show the friends. And I think that's the thing that really, really grabbed my attention, at least.
Yeah, and so as time went on, even that record, We Like It Here, which was the first album that I did with them, their success in Europe was what kind of started to, ring in everyone's ears and tell them, man, this can go, this can be something. And that was in 2013. So, so literally 10 years of pounding, and going at it and creating a circuit, either a small circuit that you would do maybe twice a year, and then expand that a little more, and then turn it into one large circuit, and then connect that over the pond, and then two circuits, one over the pond, one in Asia, one in North America, then you got another circuit over in Europe, and just kind of building from the ground up, which is also the name of the label.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Very cool. I remember the first time I heard y'all, I went over to a faculty hang at my last job, and our band director, David Ball, still a good friend of mine, I heard just even in the first couple of seconds, I said, what are we listening to? Did Dream Theater make a jazz? This is I'm like really, what is going on? Yeah, it showed me Snarky Puppy, and then it was videos. So.
Nice.
Just to compliment Larnell, though, I got to say, I mean, the band is fantastic. It's wonderful. But I was talking to a colleague of mine in town here the other day, and I told him I was bringing you. He goes, "Really?" He goes, "Snarky Puppy." He's a jazz player. He goes, "I'm not the biggest fan of their band. My students love them, but you know what? Every time I listen to the band, I go, God, that drummer's freaking awesome."
That's cool. Thank you.
Well, it's very easy, I think, to appreciate, not whoever's not playing your instrument in another group. And I was going to ask you, speaking of working with multiple drummers, does it ever? I'm guessing the answer is no, because you're clearly laid back, super friendly. You want to collaborate with everybody. Does it ever get territorial? Or what is it like working with other drummers?
You have to leave the ego at the door.
Yeah.
You have to, or else the music won't survive.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
A lot of people cannot do that. They can work with anybody, but the person who does what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean, from Spud to JT, Jason Thomas.
Okay.
We even have Jameson Ross. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but Jameson Ross put out his first record last year. and he is a drummer and a vocalist. Amazing drummer. Has worked with Christian McBride and a whole bunch of other artists. But he put his record out, first record, and it was nominated for a Grammy.
Oh my gosh.
Which is amazing.
Killer.
It's good encouragement.
Amazing. Yeah. And so, going to the Grammys this year, he was there with us as well, which was cool for his own record. But I think what makes this work is that we all have unique voices and we respect each other's voices and opinions on the instrument because we've spent so much time developing it, Mm-hmm. And Mike does a really good job of leaving room for us to express through that voice and not clamp it down. We know what the band needs, we know what the sound needs based on what Sput has laid out as the framework for drums, but we're all very creative musicians, and we're able to figure out how to take the point of what needs to be done in the song and voice it in our own way. So it's nothing but respect and love for those guys.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Hey, well, you guys, thanks so much for taking this time and
thank you.
Telling us a few words. And man, Kenyon, thanks so much for having us, and congrats on the great day.
I'm so grateful you guys made time. You're some crazy busy artists. So blessed to have you guys take time out of your schedules, fly to Fargo, Moorhead, the major metropolis.
You're welcome.
And just
my
play
pleasure,
for some
man.
students around here. It was great.
Well, Shane, I hope you're listening, and I'm sorry your flight was so early because it would have been cool to have you at the table. All right, guys, thanks a lot.
No problem.
Thank you.